Hi guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about my least favorite books that I've read so far this year. So I have 10 books to talk about with you guys today. I don't think I'm going to do this in like any particular order. I'm looking at my list. There's not one that really stands out to me as like my least favorite book of the year. They're all kind of on the same level. I'd be super interested to know down below in the comments, one, if you've read any of these books, even if you had like a totally opposite opinion, it's your favorite book ever, still like to know about it. Or just let me know what some of your least favorite books that you read were this year. But before we get into my list, let me tell you a little bit about today's sponsor, Book of the Month. As you guys may know, Book of the Month is a monthly subscription service where you can go onto their website and you can choose one of 5 books to be shipped to you every month. However, they have an awesome deal for December. They're offering a code that will get you your first box for only $5 and free shipping. They're usually $15. So you're getting a brand new release hardcover shipped straight to your door for free for only $5. I'll have the coupon code and the link down below in my description. Definitely go take advantage of it. This is the cheapest it ever is. What's awesome about Book of the Month is they have a team that vets all of these books, so you know that the 5 options that they have each month are the best of the best. They have a really wide range of genres. They're always new releases. Sometimes they're early releases, so you can get the books before anyone else does. And Book of the Month actually sent me all of their December picks so I can show you what they have to offer this month. So the first pick is a romance novel, In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. So this is about a woman and like her pursuit for happiness, but she's caught in a time loop, so it's supposed to be like a holiday rom-com. I actually ran a book club over on my Patreon page, and this was our pick for December. So if you want to read this book with us this month, I'll have the link down below in the description. I'm really pumped to read this one. The next pick is a thriller. You guys know the thrillers are always my favorites, and it's called The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. I immediately recognized this author's name and I was like, wait, I've read so many of her books. She usually writes young adult books, and this is an adult thriller. It's also an early release, and it's described as a twisty southern gothic about a rich husband, his hot young fiance, and unanswered questions about his missing wife. This sounds so good. I'm also probably going to be reading this month. I really liked Rachel Hawkins' young adult novel, so I'm interested to see how her adult fiction reads. Next we have some contemporary fiction called This Close to Okay. This is also an early release. They have a lot of early releases this month. So this one's about a near tragedy bringing 2 lonely strangers together who just might have the ability to save each other. I feel like this one's gonna be emotional. Then we have another thriller. This one is an early release and a debut author called People Like Her. Oh my gosh. Oh my, this sounds so good. Sorry, this is the first time I'm reading this description. This addictive suspense about an influencer and one creepy follower might just make you swear off your phone. Oh my god, this sounds so good. Also, like, it's really gonna freak me out. And then finally, our last pick is actually a collection of short stories and a novella called The Office of Historical Corrections. Sharp, insightful, compulsively readable, this story collection cuts right to the heart of contemporary American life. So thank you so much to Book of the Month for sending me your December picks. Make sure to check the link down below in my description and use that coupon code, and you can get one of these for just $5 and free shipping, and that's awesome. And maybe join us for our book club this month. I'm excited about it. On another note, now it's time, let's get into my list for my unfortunate least favorite reads of the year. You can hear jangling in the background. My cats have just galloped up their cat tree. So our first book that we have to talk about, The Shadows. Unfortunately, this was one of our book club picks. We read this earlier this year, and I think what made this one of my least favorite books of the year is I went in with such high expectations. Like, I was expecting to adore this book, and I did for like the first half of it, and then the second half took such a turn that it was just so monumentally disappointing that I think it hurt more than if I had gone in with no expectations. Especially because this one sounded like it was going to be right up my alley. I love thrillers and I love horror and creepy things, so a creepy thriller sounded like slam dunk. This was going to be in the top 10 of the year, not the bottom 10. It wasn't the case. So here's the thing about this book. I didn't hate it. So basically, we're following 2 different timelines in this small town. This young boy, Charlie, essentially commits a murder and then disappears. And the story behind it is so intriguing that it kind of prompts these like fan groups to pop up online, like copycats who want to recreate what he did. I think it was like 25 years prior. So our main character's name is Paul. We're following him 25 years later. He knew Charlie when this was happening when they were kids. And so 25 years later, something similar is happening again. They think it might be one of these copycat people. So basically it's a mystery of what happened in the first place 25 years ago and what's happening now, while also exploring the like deep effect that this had on Paul throughout his life. So I stand by that the beginning was fabulous, very creepy. I thought it had so much promise. So I don't even think that the book is bad or anything. I was just personally disappointed with the direction that it chose to go. A lot of these books kind of walk the line between, is this all going to be realistic? 100% set in like the real world, or are we going to dip into something kind of supernatural? I don't want to spoil you at all, obviously. I just felt like the build-up at the beginning of this book was very promising, and then the second half didn't deliver. It wasn't as interesting. It lost that kind of like creepy tone and vibe to it, and it just was underwhelming. Similarly, the second book on this list was another thriller that we read for our book club. This was The Guest List by Lucy Foley, and I know a lot of other people loved this book, so if you're interested in reading it, you should probably still try it. You might like it more than I did. There's nothing technically wrong with this one either. I just found this one to be like a very formulaic, standard thriller without really anything special about it. This one is about exactly what it sounds like. There's a wedding on this fancy remote island. A murder occurs at the wedding, and then everyone on the guest list becomes a suspect because they all had a motive. So basically we're switching back and forth between the night of the wedding when the murder occurs and what's happening in real time, and then also jumping between all of these different perspectives of people on the guest list and their past and what their motives would be to kill the person. However, you don't know who's going to get murdered. So not only are you trying to figure out who the murderer is going to be, you're trying to figure out who's going to die. This one I just felt like had a lot of missed potential. It's on this, again, remote island. There's a storm happening, and I just feel like the author really could have played more into the setting and that atmosphere. Like, I was really hoping it was going to be creepier. There were a couple of twists that I didn't see coming, but most of it I found pretty predictable and underwhelming. All of the characters were extremely unlikable too, which isn't necessarily a flaw, but it made it hard to read at times. So this is another one where like it wasn't terrible, it was just kind of for me. And I really wish we had gotten some more character development with some of the characters. And it was like the characters who I feel like should have been the most developed given their role in the story were the least developed. Anyway, not my favorite. The next book on my list was The Sound of Stars. This one had so much promise for me. It sounds like it was gonna be like quirky and fun. It has aliens in it. The characters bond over their love of music. It's supposed to be, it's a young adult like sci-fi romance. One character's a human, one's an alien. They bond over their love of music and try to save the world together. Again, it had a promising start. I found this book to be so overly long. Like, it did not need to be this long. It really started to drag for me like 25% in, and then it just like never picked up again. So overall, I was just kind of bored reading this one. I was listening to it on audiobook and I was just waiting for it to be over. It wasn't terrible, I just like wasn't invested. I was invested at the beginning, and then it just lost me in the middle because it was taking too long. It has plenty of good things about it though. The romance was cute. I liked the idea of it. I just wasn't really a big fan of the execution. Oh, this next one was so disappointing. Girls with Razor Hearts by Suzanne Young. This is the sequel to Girls with Sharp Sticks, which was on my favorite reads of the year from last year. So obviously I was highly anticipating this sequel, and it was so underwhelming. It was such a letdown compared to the first book. I think there's gonna be a third book, so this one definitely felt like that kind of like slumpy middle book that doesn't really serve a purpose other than to get you to book 3. Like, nothing really happens. The plot is very meandering and honestly just kind of random. This is another case of I went in with really high expectations because I loved the first book so much. Basically, if you don't know what the first book is about, we're following our main character, Mina. She's at this academy kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's clear something weird is going on, and the girls are treated in such a way where any normal person would realize this isn't normal, but the girls think this is normal. The school is basically like a finishing school, teaching them proper manners and how to be a stereotypical perfect wife in that gender role. The reason why I was so interested to pick it up is because it was pitched as The Handmaid's Tale meets Westworld, if that gives you an idea of where the book goes. So I can't say too much about this sequel without spoiling what happens in the first book. It just kind of lacked the hook that that first book had for me. We end off the first book with like this huge reveal, and then obviously that kicks off the second book, and I just feel like that second book never managed to like climb its way back up and like create its own excitement again after that like rivaled the excitement that came from the first book, if that makes sense at all. It just felt very bland in comparison to book 1. Frankly, I'm thinking this didn't need to be a series in the first place. However, there's gonna be a book 3. I don't think it has a release date yet, but I'll probably still read it just out of curiosity. Maybe this was just the middle book slup. Maybe book 3 will be good again. Number 5 on my list, another thriller that we read from our book club. Unfortunately, this is making it sound like we read a ton of really bad books this year. For one thing, a lot of other people in the book club liked them, and I'm just too picky with thrillers. And for another, I would say, yeah, it is kind of hit or miss. Either I absolutely love the book club pick or I'm very disappointed by it. This one was Her Pretty Face by Robin Harding. If you've been around on my channel for a couple of years, you know her book The Arrangement was one of my favorite books that I read. I think it was last year. Like, I still recommend that book to this day all the time. Loved it. So obviously I wanted to pick up another one of her books, and this one I feel like this book didn't have like a climax at all. Like, the big exciting part, the thing that the whole story was building up to, it just like wasn't in the book. Like, there was nothing. I was like waiting at the end of the book for the big exciting moment, and it just ended, and I was like, where's the other half of my book? This book is about two middle-aged women. One is a stay-at-home mom. She's living in this like pretty fancy area, and all of the other rich moms don't really accept her, and she befriends this woman who's gorgeous and basically everything that she's not, and the two form this like really close friendship that helps the first woman survive this kind of hostile environment. One of them has a pretty big secret, and I think part of what's supposed to be the mystery with this book is you don't know which of them has the secret. So there were definitely things that I liked about this book. My issues with thrillers tend to be the same things. I found it predictable. I think the twist just kind of fell flat, and it was underwhelming and kind of bland. Definitely would recommend reading her book The Arrangement over this one. The next book on my list, The King of Crows by Libba Bray. I can't even believe I read that book this year. This feels like years ago. This is the final book in the Diviners series, which is one of my all-time favorite series. I was looking forward to this book so freaking much, especially because I think the third book in this series was like my favorite in the series. So I was coming off this high. I was ready for like an epic conclusion to this amazing series. Still stand by that. Still think you should read the series. And this finale was probably one of the most disappointing last books in a series I have ever read. It's so long, nothing happens, it was so boring and slow and meandering, and it just was not it for me. Maybe it's just because I don't like the type of story where it's like a travel book and they're going from location to location to location throughout 800 pages or however long this book is. And I just felt like it was directionless. Whereas the other books in the series, they were all also really long, but they were still like memorable. Like, there was still like one aspect of the story that kind of defined that one and made it different from the rest in the series. And this last one was just so, I keep using the word bland, but like there's nothing really special about it that makes me remember this book in comparison to the rest of the series. Very underwhelming conclusion. This is one of my favorite series. Would still really recommend reading it. I think they're fantastic. They're creepy, spooky. They're set in the 1920s. A lot of the characters in the book have powers. They're known as diviners, and they all have different kinds of powers. We're following all of these different point of view characters. I think she did such a good job with the character development for each of the different stories. I loved this series so much, and this last book was just like, I've already forgotten everything that happened. I don't know if it was because it was just that forgettable or I've repressed it. Number 7, totally different genre, was Make Me Want by Katie Robert. I've been reading more and more romance this year, and this one just wasn't it for me. If you're really into the romance genre and you specifically like the trope of like the workplace kind of thing, maybe you'll like this. I don't know. I just feel like there's gotta be better ones out there than this one. This one was pretty bland. That's the word for this video apparently. Bland. So our main character, Lucy, she's recently broken up with her boyfriend. She's at an all-time low, and so she makes a proposition to one of her friends to try and make her feel like she's like back in control of her life. And I'm pretty sure he, if I remember correctly, was like really good friends with her ex-fiance, and she basically asks him for sex lessons, so they just start like hooking up a lot. Oh, and she also hires him, he's a headhunter, it's all coming back to me now. She hires him basically asking him to go find her a husband in the way that he would search for candidates for a job. And in the meantime, while he's looking for someone to marry her, they're hooking up all the time. I'm on Goodreads right now and I'm looking at all of the reviews and everyone loves this book, and it wasn't for me, I guess. Oh, it looks like it has a lot of books in the series too, so if you like it, there's a lot more where that came from. Like I said, if you really like the formulaic romance books, you'll probably like this one. I just found it a little too formulaic for my taste. I didn't really like either of the characters. I was more frustrated with them than anything. I just felt like the writer had this formula for this kind of plot and forced the characters to do things that like didn't really make sense in order to make the plot work. Not for me. it wasn't for me. Number 8 on my list is another thriller, The Lying Game by Ruth Ware. One of Ruth Ware's other books was one of my favorites of last year too. So obviously I wanted to pick up more of her books, and The Lying Game was fine. It was just kind of a meh book. I feel like it's been done before. I feel like there are several books about these like lying games. These kids at this boarding school all make a game of telling lies to people, and they get points based on the kind of lie and whether or not it's successful. And basically we're following one of those girls once she's an adult, and something bad happened in the past. We don't really know what it is, but she goes back to where this school was because one of those friends who was involved in this lying game calls her up and is like, I need you. All we know is all of the girls were expelled their senior year at that school, but we don't know why. And there were mysterious circumstances surrounding the death of one of the teachers at that school, who happened to be the father of one of the girls of this friend group. I didn't find any of the characters in this book to be particularly likable either, and again, just kind of an underwhelming thriller. I just felt like I'd read a million of them before, and just compared to liking her other book, The Turn of the Key, I think is what it was called. This one just was nowhere near at that level for me. Okay, I feel like this video is getting super long. We got 2 more. Next I have Serpent and Dove. Now, I know this book was a really big hit or miss for people in this community. People either absolutely loved it or absolutely hated it. I'm in neither of those camps. I didn't absolutely hate this book. There were parts of it that I enjoyed, but overall I just found it boring. I don't know why. There are some of these cases where I listened to the book on audiobook and I feel like I may have enjoyed it more if I'd read it physically. I'm having a hard time with young adult fantasy. If you noticed the books that I read in the second half of the year, I pretty much completely got away from that genre. I just am not reading it anymore at the moment, at least, because all of them were blurring together for me. I feel like all YA fantasies are just like carbon copies of each other. There's nothing that different about them. They all blur together in my head. They're just not really for me anymore. So this book, I felt like the world building was kind of sloppy. The romance was kind of cute. I enjoyed that. I did enjoy some of the magic system that was going on in here. I think if you prefer your fantasy to mostly be focused on the romance and you don't care about the world building or anything like that, I think those are probably the people who liked this more, and the people who are more like fantasy heavy and the romance is just kind of like a subplot for them. They don't really care about it. Maybe that's why you wouldn't like it that much. I'm the kind that I tend to like the romance being more of the focus. I'm not really into like high fantasy anymore. However, I just found this one to be pretty forgettable. I might read the second book in the series. Basically, our main character is a witch. Her love interest is a member of the church, and the church hates the witches, so they're enemies, that kind of thing. I believe they were forced to get married in this book. Is that a spoiler or is that in the description? Okay, it's in the description, we're good. And he doesn't know she's a witch. That's the rub. He's basically like a witch hunter, and he just got married to a witch and he doesn't know it. This was just one of those books where I don't have a reason why I didn't like it. It was just okay. It was fine. It wasn't memorable for me. I wasn't super attached to it. And then finally, our last book on this list is kind of the same case as the previous one, was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a young adult contemporary novel that was written in verse, and again, I think my issue with this may have been that I listened to it on audiobook and I should have just read the physical copy. This one was particularly disappointing for me because I absolutely loved Elizabeth Acevedo's other books. So I went in really hoping to enjoy this one, and I don't know why I didn't. It's about 2 sisters who don't know about each other. They live in completely different places. They share a father, and he flies back and forth between his 2 families who don't know about each other. And then he dies in a plane crash, and that kind of brings the sisters together. So I feel bad that I didn't like this book because it's like this sad, heavy, like wholesome kind of book, and I was just kind of bored. I never felt really connected to any of the characters. This is a very highly rated book on average. Like, most people I know loved this book, so I don't know what it was about my reading experience with this one that it just like didn't click with me. I don't really have any critiques of the book. I didn't like find anything wrong with it. I just found it okay. I just never really got very connected to it. So that's it for my least favorite books of the year. I'd love to hear down below in the comments if you've read any of these and what you thought of them, or what some of your least favorites were. I'm looking at my list, and honestly, I don't think I like actually hated any of these books. They were all just okay, meh, or disappointing. If I had to choose the worst one, probably The King of Crows. That was the most disappointing for me, and then Make Me Want was the one that I just like rolled my eyes at and didn't like at all. Anyway, make sure to check that link down below in my description if you want to get a book of the month box for $5. Also, if you didn't know, I'm currently doing Vlogmas over on my vlog channel, so if you're missing my uploads on this channel because I'm only doing once a week for this month, I'm doing daily uploads over there if you want to go check it out. There's links for tons of other stuff down below in the description too, but I think that's gonna be it for today's video. I'd appreciate it so much if you would give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Maybe subscribe and stick around if you're new, but I think I will just see you in our next video very, very soon. Bye.
So hit me. So hit me. So hit me. First a confession. With you I feel a connection. With